हेलो एंड वेलकम एवरीवन, दिस इज प्रोफेसर सिद्धार्थ सुराना। आई होप यू गाइस आर डूइंग गुड और मैं तो हमेशा मस्त ही रहता हूँ। वेलकम टू एपिसोड नंबर 6 रिवीजन कम अमेंडमेंट्स सीए फाइनल डायरेक्ट टैक्स May 21 November 21 attempt 100% English version. Hindi English will be separately available like always. Last class we finished up to chapter number 27 in our textbook order, that was TDS recovery of taxes. Till chapter 27 we are done. So we go ahead and like always we stick to the order of index, the order of chapters in our textbook. If on some day supposingly we have time available and then we have to jump the order, we may do that, but for now we are going in the order of index. The next chapter that we have is advanced tax. Advanced tax means tax that you are paying during the previous year. Let's be clear, up to 31st March whatever you pay is advanced tax. From 1st April whatever you pay will be self-assessment tax. Up to 31st March it is going to be advanced tax. So this chapter has told us who is required to pay, by what frequency, and what quantum of advanced tax has to be paid by various assessees. Section 207 says everybody except a resident senior citizen not having PGBP. So the only assessee that does not have to pay advanced tax, three conditions: resident, senior citizen, no business income, all three. If you have business, you have to pay advanced tax. If you are not senior citizen, you have to pay advanced tax. If you are non-resident, you have to pay advanced tax. All assessees except resident, senior citizen, not having business income. But if your final tax payable is less than 10,000, then you can pay self-assessment tax. That means if it is up to 9999, then you can pay self-assessment tax. If it is exact 10,000 or more, then you will have to pay advance tax. But obviously final payable we come to know after the year gets over. So after the year gets over, we calculate our actual total income, we calculate our actual total tax. From that we will take credit of, if at all we are eligible for, any TDS if deducted, any TCS if we have paid at the time of making our purchases, if we have any foreign tax credit, bilateral or unilateral relief, MAT AMT credit, after taking any kind of rebate or etc. available. After taking all this, we come to know what is that final payable, which we can come to know only at the end of the year. If that amount is 10,000 or more, exact 10,000 also, then advance tax is payable. Now, unfortunately, that we can come to know only after year gets over. So, in the middle of the year, we have no idea about what will be our ultimate liability. If at all, let's be clear, if at all there is a wrong estimate, we will have to pay interest for wrong estimate also. Not paying advance tax attracts 234B interest. That's our next chapter. And if there is any shortfall in the various due dates installments given, then there is 234C interest, again which will be discussed in the next class. So how are we going to calculate? I already told you, take credits of everything at the end of the year. If it is exact 10,000, let's be clear, things that matter, you don't pay attention. Exact 10,000 also advance tax is going to be payable. Even at exact 10,000, advance tax is going to be payable. So only two cases advance tax is not payable, that is resident 60 year, that is senior citizen not having business, or final amount up to 9999. Exact 10,000 you have to pay. Finally, we have the due dates. We are all aware: 15th June 15%, 15th September it will be 45%, 15th December 75%, and by 15th March we have to pay 100% of our advance tax. If there is shortfall in total, that will attract 234B, and if there is individual shortfall, that's 234C. We will learn that we will not learn that, we will revise that, don't forget. These are revision lectures. People who opt for presumptive taxation, 44 AD and ADA, only the last installment is applicable. So these three installments not applicable for anybody covered under 44 AD or 44 ADA. We will check only the shortfall. So 234B will not get affected because total advance tax has to be paid, and 234C will be calculated only for the last installment because the first three installments are not applicable. Obviously failure to pay will make you assessee in default, and whatever you pay goes without saying. Do you need someone to tell you that any advance tax paid you will be eligible for credit? Obviously you will be eligible for credit of the same. That's our chapter advance tax. Let's go ahead. Next chapter we have interest under 234 ABC. Actually we will be learning only this because this we have already studied. Late filing of TDS return, 200 rupees per day, but maximum to the extent of TDS amount. So that's over, I am not discussing. Late filing of income tax return up to December 5,000, beyond December 10,000, but if your entity is up to 5 lakh, then only 1,000. and 234G, which is a newly introduced section. Every trust which receives donation or a company or scientific research association, college, university has to file a statement specifying particulars of donor so that we can give the deduction to the donor in autofill mode, system mode. If you don't furnish the statement, then once again this and this are almost same. Our 26AS is going to contain all these details. 200 rupees per day, but maximum to the extent of amount involved. So this is going to remain same. So we will in this chapter revise only 234. ABC first 234A, delay in filing return of income under section 139(1). That means you have missed your July, October or November due date. Or when you get a notice of reassessment or search assessment, these notices ask you to file a fresh ROI even if you have already filed. If there is delay in filing return in response to these notices, then that is also going to attract your interest. Principal will be your tax amount. Interest throughout the chapter is 1% per month or part of a month. Start date of interest will be the day immediately after the due date. So here the due date as per 139(1), the day after that due date, or here whatever was time given in the notice, the day immediately after. That's why if the notice gives you 20 days from the 21st day. And when will it stop? If you file, it will stop. If there is best judgment, because ultimately if you don't file, then we have to complete your case by best judgment, then it will stop. Or we have Supreme Court judgment, Dr. Pranay Roy, payment of self-assessment tax, that will also stop because the principal will become 0. So filing, payment or best judgment, whichever is earlier, that is going to be interest under 234A. If we talk about 234B, this has got 3 parts. Let's talk about part A first. You have to pay at least 90% advance tax. So first of all, it is payable only if the final payable is 10,000 or more. If you have paid 90 or more, no interest. So if your final liability is 1 lakh and you have paid at least 90,000 as advance tax, then no interest. But if you pay 89,000, then there will be interest on the entire shortfall of 11. So 90 is to decide yes interest, no interest. If 90 or more paid, no interest. If 89 is paid, anything less than 90 is paid, then interest will come on the entire shortfall. Again, rate will be 1%. This time it will start from 1st April of assessment year, because we know we can pay advance tax up to 31st March. So interest will start from 1st April and end when? Order or payment. Return is irrelevant here. Order or payment, whichever is earlier. If we talk about part B, always remember your 147, that is reassessment order or search assessment order, will identify some higher tax of a past year, because these are investigation provisions. So that tax you should have paid in that past year, but you are enjoying since so many years. From that year till this year, 1st April of that relevant assessment year up to the date of payment or order, whichever is earlier, on that shortfall, that extra interest, that extra principal which is decided, that extra tax which is decided under these proceedings 147 or 153A, extra tax into 1% from 1st April of that year, relevant assessment year, up to the present date. That is going to be your part B interest. And whenever you make an application to Income Tax Settlement Commission, this time we have not caught you, but you are declaring, you still have to pay interest. This is again a tax which should have been paid in a past year, but you are paying in the present year. So from that year till this year, that tax will become your principal. 1% per month or part, fixed rate of interest in this chapter. Once again from 1st April of relevant assessment year, same as part B. In fact, part A also was 1st April of relevant assessment year till the date of. Actually, here, if they say payment or order, whichever is earlier, you should know in ITSC, first we make payment, then we make application, and then the order of ITSC comes. So payment always will happen first. So they should have said payment, but they have said application. So if after making payment you don't apply very soon, for that period also interest will get attracted. Moreover, in ITSC minimum extra tax is 10 lakh. In fact, in such cases 50 lakh. So even if 1 month is extra, the interest will be minimum extra 10,000, minimum extra 50,000. Very smart they have played here. And then if we talk about 234C, first installment 15% you have to pay. If you have paid up to 12%, then no interest. But if there is less than 12% paid, then entire shortfall. So supposingly your final payable comes to 1 lakh. Then by 15th June, you should have paid 15,000. If you have paid up to 12,000, no interest. But if you paid 11,000, then 4,000. 1%, 3 months. In 234C, best thing is period is fixed. Any payment on 16th June will be counted as 15th September. So 1%, 3 months. Shortfall, 1%, 3 months. Let's go to 15th of September. You should have paid total of 45,000. Up to 36 allowed, we are giving you a margin. Instead of 15, 12 allowed. Instead of 45, 36 allowed. If you paid 36, no interest. If you have not paid 36, entire shortfall. If you paid 30, then 15,000, 1% into 3 months. In case of your third installment, 75% has to be paid up to your 15th of December. That's my birthday. I was born on advance tax due date. 75% has to be paid by the 15th of December. And here there is no further margin. If there is 1 rupee shortfall also, that shortfall into 1%, once again 3 months. And in March, you have to pay 100%. Any shortfall, no margin, 1%, but only 1 month, because now only 16 days are remaining. So shortfall 1%, 3. Shortfall 1%, 3. Shortfall 1%, 3. And last, shortfall 1%, 1. But for the first 2 installments, you have the facility. Instead of 15, 12 can be paid. Instead of 45, 36 can be paid only for the first 2. And those covered in 44 AD and ADA, for them, it is going to be only that last one shortfall 1%, 1 month. Only that last installment is going to be applicable. Certain cases, you can get waiver of that interest if there is income due to capital gain or casual winnings, or you are earning PGBP for the first time. This can be deleted now because 115 BBDA has got no relevance. Dividend income is going to be taxable right from the beginning. So if you have any of these incomes because of which your tax is coming, tax is arising because of these incomes, then any installment which was over before you earned these incomes, that is going to be ignored. And finally, you can take facility. CCIT can reduce your waive penalty in certain circumstances. 234E fees, TDS related, already told you. F, we already studied. G is an amendment, but now we are aware in penalties chapter also we discussed, and again we are discussing 200 rupees per day maximum to the extent of tax amount. And lastly, whenever you get demand notice, you have to pay within 30 days. Otherwise, you are assessing in default. From 31st day, 1% per month or part interest will start, and this interest will go on till the date you make payment. So outstanding on 31st day is your principal, 1% is your rate, and till the date you make payment, from the 31st day till that date, interest is going to get attracted. That's your section 220. Plus, if you are assessing in default, 100% penalty also is going to get attracted. That was your chapter on interest 234 ABC. Without wasting time, let's go ahead. Next chapter that we have, refund. So till now they were taking tax, now they are giving. When will you get refund? Obviously when your taxes paid are more. So when your advance tax TDS is more than your liability, you get refund. Who will get refund? The assessee who paid, obviously. But in 2 cases, one is your representative assessee, another is your clubbing. In representative assessee, the representative will get refund, and in clubbing, the person who offered the income to tax. So if TDS is deducted for minor child FD interest, the interest is offered by the parent. Now the refund will also be given to the parent. So other than that, the assessee who paid tax will be eligible. But you will have to claim your refund. They will not come to your house. You have to claim it. How to claim it? Earlier there were 2 options, but now only return filing is allowed. File your return, take your refund. But if it is refund on appeal, this will be given without claim, because I have won an appeal. So you have to give me my refund. However, remember 2 things. If the original order is set aside, then you have to wait for fresh assessment. And second, Supreme Court judgment, Shelley products, only the excess tax will be refunded. 241A says that when the AO is doing intimation, at that time he has to accept whatever you are showing. But if he is sure that he is going to do scrutiny later, then he can just issue the intimation but withhold your refund. He may not pay for the protection of interest of revenue. He may not pay your refund amount. He may withhold your refund amount. This chapter is only to claim refund. Here you cannot increase or decrease liability. Whenever you will get refund, you will get interest on refund also. Obviously, principal is going to be your refund amount. Rate, whenever they charge 1%, but when they will give you only 0.5%. So, refund into 0.5%. Start date will depend on whether the refund is due to advance tax TDS or whether it is due to self-assessment tax. Advance tax and TDS government receives during the previous year. So, they will give you interest from 1st April of assessment year. And self-assessment tax you pay later. So, that will start from payment or return, whichever is later. So, start date will be different. Start date for advance tax TDS will be 1st April of assessment year. But if you file your return on time, if the return is late, then from date of filing. And for self-assessment tax, the start date is going to be what? Payment or return, whichever is earlier. End date of interest will be your date of granting refund. So, principal will be refund, 0.5% per month or part of a month, and end date is same, date of granting refund. Start date of interest for advance tax TDS, 1st April if you file your return on time, 1st April of assessment year. And if you file belated, then date of filing. And for asset tax, payment or return, whichever is later, subject to certain rules and regulations that delay attributable to the assessee will be ignored. Interest paid will be disallowed, but this interest received will be taxable as income from other sources. You will get only simple interest, but if they pay your principal and they don't pay your interest, then Supreme Court judgment, this is not Narendra Modi, this is Narendra Doshi, then your interest will take the character of principal, and in fact you will get interest on interest also. If there is any past outstanding that you have not paid and current year any refund is arising, then they will have the power to withhold your refund. They can stop you from getting your refund in the current year, but only they can do it. You cannot do it. You cannot say, sir, my past refund is pending, so this year I will not pay tax. They can withhold your current year refund if there is any past outstanding due pending. And lastly, in case your AO gives you intimation, and in intimation he grants you refund, and later in scrutiny that refund is reduced, then you have to return that money with interest. That excess refund that you took will be your principal. Rate will be 0.5%, because when they paid you refund, they paid you only 0.5%. So you have to return that money with 0.5% from the date you took the refund till the date of order. This won't be till the date of returning the money, till the date of order. But don't worry, with order will come demand notice, and you get 30 days. If you don't return within 30 days, automatically from the 31st day, again that interest of demand notice will start. So maximum margin is only of 30 days. The excess refund 0.5% from the date of taking refund to the date of order. That's your 234D interest, and that is our chapter, refund and interest on refund. Let's go ahead. Next chapter that we have is a very small chapter, recovery proceedings. Whenever your tax is decided by way of assessment, and if you don't pay, what are the ways to recover? One, you can send TRO and recover the money from you. They have given some sections which are totally irrelevant about jurisdiction, validity and stay. Yes, this is relevant only to know that if TRO can grant you stay, then obviously CIT appeals can also grant you stay. Other than sending TRO, what other option do we have? We can approach your debtors. So from wherever you are the defaulting assessee, any third party who is going to pay salary to the defaulting assessee or any other income to the defaulting assessee or holding any asset of the defaulting assessee, we can approach that third party and request that third party to cooperate with income tax department. If that third party cooperates, then absolved towards the defaulting assessee. The defaulting assessee cannot do recovery from you. But if you don't, then you will be personally responsible. You will become assessee in default, and we will do recovery against you by sending TRO. But wait, from the third party, we can't go to the debtor. We can't go to the fourth party. Third party only recovery under section 222 will take place, not under 226. Apart from that, we can take help of state government. We can take help of foreign government if there is a DTAA or a TIEA. In the same manner as we recover tax, we will also be recovering interest and penalty. If you are a person who is domiciled in India, domiciled means you stay in India, and you are, if you are domiciled in India, this provision is not applicable. If you are domiciled outside India, my bad, humble apologies. If you are domiciled outside India and you come to India for the purpose of earning, then before leaving, you will have to require income tax clearance certificate. You will have to obtain that, and you require income tax clearance certificate. You obtain that and submit it. Only then you will be allowed to leave. This is applicable only if you are coming from outside India to India for earning, not for visit. And what about somebody from India going abroad? Not required. Only normal cases it is not required. But if you are involved in serious financial irregularities, then they can insist on income tax clearance certificate from you as well. And lastly, if we do recovery under income tax and there are dues under other law, then it will be proportionately divided between both departments. The entire money will not be retained by the income tax department. That's our chapter called recovery proceeding. And this takes us to the last chapter of our CA final textbook. 32 chapters. After this, we go to the volume 3 of our textbook, which is IPCC portion, CA intermediate portion, heads of income, clubbing, set of deduction, chapters which get repeated in CA final. But for now, we are on chapter number 32, that is transfer pricing. I need not tell you the importance of this chapter. This is a part of international tax in paper 7 and 100% repeated in paper 6C international tax. Also, in fact, it is same in both the papers, and out of your entire syllabus of international tax, this is one of the most important. So, section 92 says any income or expense in an international transaction or specified domestic transaction, domestic transfer pricing also covered, shall be computed at arm's length price. So we should first note the general points of the chapter. What are the general points that we study? If you remember class chronology, first we study section 92, then we study about 10-12 points to be noted. After we study those 10-12 points to be noted, then we go to the meanings of associated enterprise, international transaction, specified domestic transaction, and last we learn the methods of computation of arm's length price. So first section 92, income or expense, both ways transfer pricing will apply between associated enterprise, obviously. Whether it is international or specified, it will be a specified domestic, it will be computed at arm's length price. Fair enough. First few general points. Due to transfer pricing, when income of one enterprise increases, the income of the other enterprise will remain unchanged. So if we are increasing sales of one party, the other party cannot increase the purchase deduction. From the transfer pricing addition, you will not get any 10AA or chapter 6A, any kind of deduction. From the original amount you can claim, but from the addition you will not be allowed. If applying transfer pricing, very, very important, third point, if applying the provisions of transfer pricing reduce the tax liability in India, then transfer pricing provisions are not going to be applicable. Then we have section 92D, which says maintain data, document, information. If you don't maintain 2% for non-maintenance, and if you don't furnish 2% for non-furnishing, penalty is going to get attracted. You will require a CA report form 3CEB under section 92E. If you don't furnish that report, then 1 lakh flat penalty is going to be attracted on you. Flat penalty of 1 lakh. Then, just like we appoint valuation officer, here we can appoint something called a transfer pricing officer for computation of arm's length price. You can also go for something called safe harbor rule. They have recently notified, but if the institute issues it by way of circular in the RTP, then we will discuss. Otherwise, you are required to ignore. But they have said now you can utilize safe harbor rules for multiple purposes for determining income accruing in India. For practical amendments have taken place. Theoretically, there is no amendment, no great amendment that has taken place out here. Then another option that we give you is advanced pricing agreement. You can enter into an agreement. It should be approved by the government and the pricing will be decided in advance, similar to AAR. To avoid litigation, all returns and orders will be according to the advanced pricing agreement, which will be applicable for current year, future 4 years, and if you want, you can apply it to past 4 years. Also, we will call it rollback. Till the time the law and facts remain same, the APA will work. If there is fraud or misrepresentation, then the APA will be cancelled, and if the returns or orders are already returns are filed or orders are passed, then the return will be revised or the order will be rectified and made according to the advanced pricing agreement. Then in this chapter only I teach you the concept of notified jurisdictional area. Whenever a territory outside India is not cooperating with India, not exchanging information, then we will declare that territory as NJA, notified jurisdictional area. All assessees in NJA will be associated, compulsory, because we don't even know who is the owner over there. Associated. Any expense you incurred in NJA will be disallowed, except if you allow us to question you, and in that also minimum 30% TDS will get affected. Any receipt from NJA, including capital receipt like loan, will be your taxable income, and they had notified Cyprus, which was again later on removed from the definition. Then we also have the concept of secondary adjustment, section 92C. I'll teach you from the theory, section 92C. So as these are revision lectures, we are not going into the detail of the PDF with respect to everything. In fact, those who have been my full course students at least know this, that we never touch the PDF. Any person who requires to read the book while teaching you, then that person is basically only a translator, only reading, does not know the law. I know the full income tax law by heart. I don't touch the textbook in class at all. But because in revision lectures I cannot write everything, otherwise the time will be too much, I just keep it open. I discussed most of the things. This is your secondary adjustment. Whenever there is an adjustment in your income tax computation because of transfer pricing, you have to reflect it in your books of accounts also. That's your secondary adjustment. But you have to reflect in your books and associated enterprise, and the difference has to be repatriated from the associated enterprise within the time given, that is 90 days from the due date of return filing, 30th November, because it is transfer pricing. And failure will attract interest. If the amount, this is what I wanted to show you, if the amount of secondary adjustment is in Indian rupees, then it will be the annual lending rate of SBI on 1st April plus 3.25%. Annual rate, SBI rate, 1st April plus 3.25%. And if it is in foreign currency, then we will take 6-month rate. So annual becomes 6 months, SBI becomes LIBOR, 1st April becomes 30th September, and we will add only 3%. In INR, annual SBI on 1st April plus 3.25. And in Forex, 6 month LIBOR, 30th September plus 3%. Secondary adjustment into this rate is going to be the deemed interest. We will assume that you are getting interest, and if you don't want to get into the nonsense of secondary adjustment because it won't be possible, then pay this one-time tax of 18% plus 12% plus 4%. Pay this tax till the date you pay tax. We will calculate the interest. Once you pay this tax, thereafter you don't need to make the secondary adjustment. Effectively, we will end up taking tax on the same amount twice, but that is what it is going to take place. And last, we also do the concept of interest disallowance again, which was introduced by BEPS action plan. Interest disallowed under section 94A NJ, I already taught you. Limit on interest deduction. Indian company or a PE of foreign company is paying interest exceeding 1 crore rupees, which it will be taking as deduction to a non-resident associated enterprise. Who is the receiver of interest? Who is the payee? Non-resident associated enterprise. So payer is someone in India. Payment is interest more than 1 crore, which is PGBP deduction to non-resident associated enterprise. Or sometimes what will happen, our non-resident associated enterprise will give loan or guarantee to a third party, unrelated party. And indirectly from that third party, we are taking that money. So our associated has indirectly given us. That will also be counted. The maximum deduction will be 30% of your EBITDA, earning before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization. Maximum deduction will be 30% of your EBITDA. And the excess will get disallowed. Whatever is disallowed in the current year can be carried forward for 8 years and adjusted within the section limit. First, you give preference to the current year interest. Then if there is any limit remaining in 30%, you can adjust your brought forward interest. This will not apply to Indian company or PE or foreign company which is engaged in business of banking. So, listen, somebody in India is paying interest to non-resident associated enterprise. If you are in the business of banking or insurance, then 94B is not applicable, and one amendment has taken place. If the lender is a PE of a non-resident which is in the business of banking, if this is in the business of banking, a PE of non-resident. So, till now if this was in banking business, then 94B was not applicable. Now, if this is in banking business and it is a permanent establishment in India, then also 94B is not going to be applicable and carried forward 8 years. I already told you. These are general points that we learn in transfer pricing chapter when we start the chapter. Then we go to the meanings. Associated enterprise. Whenever one is holding in other, capital control or management, or a common entity is holding in both capital control and management, then they will be considered as associated enterprise. Then in terms of shareholding, it has to be minimum 26%, or you are appointing board of directors. But in the end, they give one line. Whenever there appears any mutual connection, the AO will assume you to be associated enterprise. So the meaning becomes overall a little less important. Then we go to international transaction. Whenever one of the parties is non-resident, at least one non-resident. If all are resident, it will not be international. And that transaction can be buying, selling or leasing of goods or services, providing tangible or intangible property, provision of services, lending or borrowing or money, apportionment of overhead cost, absorption costing, or it can be any impact on asset, liability, profit or loss. Any financial transaction involving a non-resident is going to be international transaction. And then we went to meaning of specified domestic transaction. Transaction referred to in 10AA, that is SEZ. Any income related chapter 6A deduction. When you have two companies, one is eligible, one is ineligible, then you may have the tendency of that internal price manipulation. So income related chapter 6A deduction. And in that new section for companies 115BAB, where manufacturing companies in the new regime have very little tax rate, then again you will have tendency to book more income in that company. Such transactions will also amount to domestic transfer pricing provisions or subject to domestic transfer pricing provisions. These are specified domestic transactions. If the total exceeds 20 crores in a year, then they will be subjected to transfer pricing. Otherwise, in the existing provisions, we already have rule that inter-business transfer has to take place at fair market value. And last, we come and learn the computation of arm's length price. We are given 6 methods: comparable uncontrolled price method, resale price method, cost plus method, profit split method, transactional net margin method, and any other method as may be notified. These are the 6 methods. When more than one method, then you can apply the arithmetical mean concept. Here we also have the range concept. Cup method is the most logical of all. Whatever you are selling to unrelated, that price should be applied. Selling or buying unrelated, that should be applied to your related party transaction. If more than one, then you can take the simple average, but you have to eliminate the differences differences because of quality, quantity, other cost and everything. Eliminate that and then you make them comparable and apply the unrelated price. If we have not sold anything to unrelated, everything we have sold to related and that related party is reseller, then take the resale price minus the profit margin. That's the resale price method. If we are selling our goods and our related party is a manufacturer, so then it is not a reseller, we can't apply resale price. Then we will take our cost and add profit margin, cost plus method. But if the product that we are giving that does not have any industry, it is only a spare part, then we will take our cost and add profit margin of the product of the related party. For example, if we are giving pen cap to our associated enterprise and it is selling pen, so on the cost of pen cap we will add the profit margin of the pen industry, which is stupid, but there is no other option. That's your profit split method. And in transactional net margin method, when we have a chain of related parties with each other, then at every level, at every layer, you will be counting or you will be calculating the margin, the net margin of every individual transaction, and accordingly you will compute the arm's length price at every transaction. That's how we compute arm's length price, and that's our chapter called transfer pricing. With this, dear students, we are done with the revision of our first 32 chapters. That is our volume 1 and volume 2, and we will go ahead because it's only half an hour into the lecture today. We will at least do till a little over 1 hour to be, honestly satisfied with our revision class. Obviously, that will reduce the number of episodes that we have, and it's good only because my general revision lectures are about 3 to 4 hours maximum because I want to cover maximum in minimum time. Having said that, as you are aware, due to multiple requests that sir, please go in a little detail. That is why I'm actually going into so much detail, but I still don't plan to take it to 20-25 hours because that will defeat the purpose of revision lecture. So to keep it under 10 hours, I think this is the best strategy, and I will take you to that chapter. Let's be honest, this chapter is not covered in CA final full course lectures also. At least I give the book. A lot of places the book is also not given because last time this was asked in 2011. So if there is any employer-employee relationship, that income will be taxable under salary. Certain allowances are exempt, and then we have got certain perquisite valuations in this chapter. I would maximum that I can do is I can tell you about one amendment. Sir, what is this PDF? Sir, this is my amendment summary. Chapter wise I have made the amendments, and sir, will we get this PDF? Yes, this PDF I will provide and free of cost. See, whatever textbooks are there, we gave the PDF during the lockdown. Otherwise, we give only hard copies. But these are free study material related things for students. So yes, this PDF will be available free. And this is, in all the revision lectures we were doing from the textbook directly. So we never happened to open this in class. We were doing the amendments within the revision lecture, but this is a separate summary I have made covering all the amendments chapter by chapter in the order of again my textbook. So this is chapter number 33, salary. All amendments. See, if you see the TDS one which has got maximum amendments, everything has been put. Sir, how can we get the PDF? First question that you, sir, where can I get this PDF? Fixed question. I am answering that. Can you see the Telegram channel link on the ticker? Wait, right now it is about the video lectures. Yes, please use this number also. There's some profit for me. This is the number and the website. And then in this ticker also you'll get the Telegram channel link. So you please visit my Telegram channel, and in the document section I had uploaded, I think in the month of November, and you will definitely get the amendment summary over there. It's already uploaded in my Telegram. So stay connected for your benefit. Just this one amendment that has taken place in salary chapter, that maximum tax benefit with respect to employer contribution to RPF. We get exemption up to 12% of salary. NPS, in employer contribution we get 80 CCD subsection 2. Actual contribution or 10% of salary, whichever is lower. And in superannuation fund, the limit is up to 1,50,000. So there are 3 respective tax benefits. Here it is an exemption. Here it is an exemption. Here it is a deduction, 80 CCD. But in the respective provisions, respective benefits, the total benefit shall not be more than 7,50,000 rupees. Total benefit of RPF, NPS and your superannuation fund will not be more than 750. And if there is any interest accruing, then in excess of 7,50,000, that will also be taxable. The total benefit now that you can take in respect of your employer contribution, the total will be up to rupees 50,000. That's this only amendment that I had to tell you in salary chapter. Apart from that, kindly do not expect me to do anything for you from salary chapter because it is not covered in full course. Also, let's go ahead. I will take you now to the next chapter, income from house property. At least let's be clear. I teach this chapter in full course properly taught in full course. In crash course, it is not taught in detail. I think just a rough introduction, and so will be happening in the revision class. 3 conditions: building, so land not allowed. You should be the owner. Subletting not allowed. Not using it for business. If these 3 conditions are satisfied, income will be taxable under house property. Actual rental income will not be taxable. The annual capacity, that is the annual value, will be taxable. How to compute gross annual value? Municipal valuation will be given. Fair rent will be given. Expected rent will be whichever is higher. Standard rent will be given. ALV, annual letting value, will be expected rent or standard rent, whichever is lower. Now take your actual rent. Actual rent can be received or receivable if you have satisfied some conditions, like the tenancy is bona fide, you made the defaulting tenant vacate your property, taken legal action against him, then you can take received actual rent. Otherwise, you will have to take receivable. Actual or ALV, whichever is higher. Actual or ALV, whichever is higher, is going to become your gross annual value. But if at all there is any vacancy, then your actual cannot be compared. Vacancy will not include SOP period. Actual rent plus that period that the property was locked, that's vacancy period. That total will be compared with your ALV. For comparison will be happening between actual plus vacancy with ALV. Actual plus vacancy will be compared with ALV. If ALV is higher, that is the answer. If actual plus vacancy is higher, then actual will be answer, because the vacancy was added only for comparison purposes. That's our gross annual value. Municipal taxes only if paid and paid by landlord will be allowed as a deduction. That will give you net annual value. Standard deduction will be 30%. Obviously, in SOP, we know maximum 2 houses in SOP. Now it is 2. Last year there was an amendment. So NAV directly will be 0. Otherwise, for LOP, DLOP, more than 2 houses will go in DLOP. So for LOP, DLOP, 30% of your NAV will be standard deduction, and if at all there is any interest on borrowed capital on due basis, whether paid or unpaid, municipal taxes only if paid, interest on due basis. Outside India, you should have deducted TDS. If the loan is taken for purchase, construction, repair, renewal, reconstruction, then only interest will be allowed. Any sixth purpose will not be allowed. But if you repay this loan to and take another loan for your home, you shift from one bank to other, that is going to be allowed as a deduction. LOP, DLOP, no limit, but SOP maximum 30,000. Actual or 30, whichever is lower. However, if you fulfill 3 conditions: purchase or construction on or after 1/4/1999 and construction completed within 5 years from the end of the year of taking the loan, then the maximum limit will increase from 30,000 to 2 lakh rupees. So actual or 2 lakh, whichever is lower. So normally it is actual or 30, whichever is lower, that will be your interest. But if you fulfill 3 conditions, actual or 2 lakh, whichever is lower, and after taking interest deduction, you have your income from house property. Any property which is let out for 1 day also will be treated as LOP. If there are co-owners, compute income from house property and a portion in the ownership ratio. If your house can be divided into units, ground floor and first floor, then you can treat one as SOP, one at LOP, and apply the provisions accordingly. If there is any recovery of unrealized or arrears of rent, bad debts recovered or arrears recovered, then recovery will be taxable in the year of recovery with flat standard deduction of 30%. So if 1 lakh is received, 70,000 will be taxable, flat deduction of 30%. Lastly, if there is any pre-construction interest from the date of taking loan till the date, either you repay the loan or 31st March before completion of construction. Because once construction is completed, from that year interest deduction will start. So date of repayment or 31st March before completion of construction, whichever is earlier, that will be end of pre-construction period. From date of loan till the end of the pre-construction period, whatever interest has accrued, that deduction also you can take in 5 installments, starting from the year of construction completion. In 5, so you will have current year interest plus 1/5 of pre-construction, current year plus 1/5, current year plus 1/5. First 5 years after completion of property, your interest deduction will have 2 components: current year, unless the loan is repaid, and second 1/5 pre-construction interest. That total in LOP will be unlimited, and in SOP that total will be subjected to 30 or 2 lakh limit, whichever is applicable. That total will be subjected to the limit. So you don't get 30,000 limit for current year and 30,000 for pre-construction separate. Total will be subjected to your limit. That's our house property, income from house property in terms of our revision of income from house property. Hello. I took a short break. That is why there was a cut in the video. There was some emergency. I have a human body. We have a lot of emergencies. Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead. Next chapter, and probably this is going to be the last chapter for the day. Last but definitely not the least. My students are sure of getting full 14 marks in this sum. So your 30 marks in MCQ, 14 marks in PGBP, you have passed. Then you can target your aggregate, your exemption. You can use direct tax. Remember this line. You are going to use direct tax for covering your aggregate and your intergroup aggregate. This should be that subject for you. So, profits and gains of business or profession. Net profit is going to be taxable. For this net profit, we will take starting from the P&L account net profit and we will make the adjustment. What are the 4 adjustments that we make? Any expense which is debited but disallowed is going to be added back. Any income which is taxable but not credited will be added back. On the left side, we will have two adjustments. Any expense which is not debited but allowed has to be subtracted. Any income which is credited but it is not taxable has to be subtracted. So we start with the wrong profit, that is net profit as per P&L, and make these adjustments. For this, the debited or not debited, credited or not credited part will be given to us in the question. We just have to focus on the tax part. In the tax part also, for the income, whether it is related to business or no, we just have to check that. For the expense, they have given us the main part of the chapter. All that we are required to learn in the chapter is whether a particular expense is allowed or no. From section 30 to 37(1) we have allowed expense, and from 37(2)(b) to 43(b) we have disallowed expenses. Section 30, rent, rate, taxes, repairs and insurance of building with one main condition and criteria: the building should be used for the purpose of business. Then all your expenses, rent, rate, tax, repairs, insurance will be allowed. Section 31 is giving you deduction of repairs and insurance of plant and machinery and furniture. So repairs and insurance allowed. Rates and taxes won't come because that comes only for property, but rent will not be allowed here. We know that. Now this is revision lecture, so we know that rent will be allowed. If for business, it will be allowed in section 37(1). Section 32, depreciation. 2 conditions: owned and used for business. Owned and used for business. If you fulfill these 2 conditions, then you are going to get deduction of depreciation, whether tangible asset or whether it is intangible asset. Only on land you will not get, and cars imported between 1975 to 2001, you will not get depreciation. If an amalgamation has taken place, then you have to apportion in the ratio of number of days. If your asset is purchased worth more than rupees 10,000 and that payment is made to the same person on the same day, then the payment has to be made by way of account pay check, account pay draft, or electronic mode, any other mode. Then your depreciation will be disallowed forever. Whatever method you follow in accounts, in tax, you have to compulsorily follow WTV, that is block asset method. All assets will be divided into blocks. The blocks are pre-decided and you have to follow the respective blocks and the rates that are given out here. Any purchases will be added in the block. Any sales will be subtracted from the block, and after subtracting sales, if we have positive quantity and amount, we will charge depreciation, no profit or loss. As long as there is positive quantity and positive amount, no profit or loss, it will be adjusted in the amount of depreciation. When the amount becomes 0 or the quantity is over, all assets are sold and the block is not there, then we will calculate capital gain or loss. Selling price will be actual and cost price will be opening plus purchases, the value in the block. This will be always short term, never long term, because we want this capital gain to be taxable at normal rate of PGBP. If we make it long term, then it will go in special rate, which we don't want. And that's how our block asset method works. Then apart from that, we have the concept of additional depreciation for people in manufacturer, only plant and machinery, new asset, and it has to be eligible asset. Then you will get additional depreciation on the cost of your plant and machinery, and in the year of put to use, in the year, and this you get only once in the year in which you put to use. Normal depreciation you will get every year, additional depreciation only once. And if you are in power generation business, then we will also give you the SLM option. That's our section 32, depreciation deduction. Then in section 35 we have scientific research. Scientific research, till last year, you know, there were a lot of difficult adjustments that you had to study. The best news is now all the 7 parts of scientific research, I'll show you the page number. 32 AD, by the way, you can delete because it was applicable only till 31st March 2021. It is not going to be applicable. 33 AB, ABA you can read. Scientific research has got 7 parts. 35(1)(1), revenue expense for own business. 35(2), capital expenditure for own business. 35(1)(2), contribution to college, association, university, for scientific research. 35(1)(3) contribution for statistical or social science research. 35(2)AA contribution to national laboratory IIT. 35(2)AB Indian company doing in-house research and development. Deduction on all types of capital and revenue expenditure except land and building. And 35(1)(2)A contribution to that Indian company. There were different limits. Some there were 150, some there were 100%. The best news is with effect from AY 21-22, everything in section 35 is going to get restricted to 100%. Let's also be clear, this amendment was brought by Mr. Jaitley in 2016 budget. In 2016, he said from 2021 this will become 100. We were aware of this. It is only becoming applicable in our current year. So this is the first year of 100%. But this was applicable or this was incorporated in the law way back in 2016. That's your 35, section 35. And now we also studied this in a lot of other chapters, in penalties chapter and in that chapter that we studied today, that is interest chapter, that they have to furnish a statement showing particulars of donor so that the donor can get their deduction. And just like charitable trusts are required to take fresh registration, they will also be required to take fresh registration. Then we have 35(AB) and (ABB), that is telecom license and spectrum fees. Cost of that license or fees divided by balance life. Why balance life? Because it will start with payment. The moment you pay, you have to see how many years are left for that installment, and on that basis, on straight line method, you will be taking deduction. Obviously, you won't get depreciation. 35(AD), 14 specified businesses. If you invest, you get 100% deduction of capital expenditure. Obviously, then you can't take depreciation. You will not get deduction of land, building or land, goodwill or financial instrument, because it has to be a new business, not splitting up or reconstruction of existing business. Maximum local plant and machinery allowed will be 20% of your total plant and machinery. Loss in specified business can be adjusted only against profit of any specified business. You have to file your return on time. You can take unlimited carry forward. Same business, you cannot take 35(AD) and 10AA. Both same business will not be allowed. You will get deduction of pre-commencement expense also without any time limit, but you have to capitalize at the time of commencement. If your expense is more than 10,000, then that has to be incurred by the allowed modes. Otherwise, you will not get deduction. Just one clarification. We all know that deduction like additional depreciation, 35(AD), in new taxation regime, you have to forego all this. You have to forego all this in new taxation regime. Okay. So big confusion arises. Sir, supposingly I go to new taxation regime. That means I am not taking 35(AD). Once I don't take 35(AD), will I get depreciation deduction? Because we know any assessee falling in specified business, no depreciation. So what assessing officers were doing, this is a practical amendment. Assessee is doing specified business. That means eligible for 35(AD), ineligible for depreciation. And there were some assessees who were not taking 35(AD) benefit. Still AO was saying, you are doing specified business, you will not get deduction. Sir, I am doing specified business, I will not get deduction provided I opt for it. And that is what they have clarified, that 35(AD) is optional and the other deduction shall be denied only if you have opted for that. If you have not opted for 35(AD), you will be eligible to take your deduction. And finally, what are these businesses? You can just quickly read through, because we discussed this. We take more than 1 hour in class to explain all these businesses: warehousing of agricultural produce, cold chain, hospital, production of fertilizers, slum redevelopment, hotel with minimum 2-star, cross-country petroleum natural gas pipeline network, slurry pipeline for transportation of iron ore, semiconductor wafer fabrication unit, warehousing of sugar, ICD CFS business, beekeeping and honey making business, affordable housing scheme. Here we have discussed all these businesses in detail. You just have to read through them so that you know which businesses are there, and any asset that you purchase for this specified business, if up to 8 years you have to hold it, and that's a lock-in period. If you transfer before that, then whatever deduction you have taken right now, that will be reversed, but obviously net of depreciation foregone. So the deduction taken minus the depreciation taken, the deduction taken minus the depreciation foregone shall be added back in your PGBP income. And we also should remember that this 35(AD) deduction net of depreciation gets added back in our alternate minimum tax. Then some basic 35CCA, rural development or urban poverty eradication, CCC, agriculture extension project. Here also same thing. Now everything will be 100%. CCD, skill development, again the same thing, everything will be 100%. Basic amendments, and remember these were brought by Jaitley ji in 2016. They are only getting activated now, incorporated way back. Preliminary expenses, you have to take 5% of cost of a project or capital employed, whichever is higher, compare with actual expense, whichever is lower. That will be allowed over a period of 5 years. 35DD amalgamation expenses 5 years, 35DD expenditure on VRS again over a period of 5 years. Then we have some other deduction, very basic, insurance of stock in trade, medical premium of employees, all that is going to be allowed as a deduction. And then we come to our general deduction. Whenever you incur any expense in the previous year for the purpose of business, not capital, not personal, not covered from section 30 to 36, not prohibited by law, and also should not be for CSR under Companies Act, then we are going to give you a general deduction instead of creating section after section. For example, your rent of plant and machinery and furniture shall get covered out here. This takes us to part 2, that is expenses which are disallowed. Any contribution to political party shall be disallowed, because anyways we get 100% deduction, and this is a fixed adjustment in exam. Add in PGBP, less in chapter 6A, but chapter 6A only if it is other than cash. So if it is cash, add in PGBP, don't less in chapter 6A. If it is check, still add in PGBP and subtract in chapter 6A. 40 small a, 3 parts. Part 1, any kind of direct tax, income tax, if for past year wealth tax, any DDT, buyback tax, tax for employees, everything will be disallowed. Part 2, TDS not deducted or deducted but not deposited up to due date of return filing. 30% for resident pays, 100% for non-resident pays. Sir, what if the TDS is paid in a future year? Whatever will be disallowed today will be allowed in that future year. And third part is state government undertaking, making any payment like royalty, privilege fee, license fee or anything shall be disallowed. 40B and BA we already see in partnership chapter, so we don't discuss them here. If you have made excessive payments to your relatives, excess will be disallowed. If you have made payment to same person on the same day, other than the allowed modes, account pay, check, account pay, draft or electronic mode, then your expense is going to get disallowed, same person, same day. And if you are making payment to transporter, then the limit will be 35,000. For objective questions, you should know the exceptions. In rule 6DD, these are the cases where 48.3 will not apply. So if you fall in any of these cases, then 48.3 is not going to be applicable on you. 48.7, 9, 11, contribution to employee benefit funds. If it is approved, it will be allowed, but subject to 43B. If it is unapproved, then it will be disallowed, but if actually paid, it will be allowed. So we later on conclude in class that whether paid or unpaid will decide whether allowed or disallowed. Approved, unapproved does not make much difference, except that for approved, 43B gives us time up to due date of return filing. This brings us to 43B, certain deductions only if you have actually made payment. Due basis you will not get deduction, and payment can be made up to due date of return filing. Any kind of direct tax, payment for usage of railway assets, that's government related. 3, about employees, bonus and commission, so not applicable to salary, and commission to agent, this section not applicable. Bonus and commission to employees, leave encashment and contribution to approved funds, and 2, interest related, public financial institution, scheduled bank and cooperative bank. Only if you pay you will get deduction. If unpaid on due date of return filing, disallowed in current year, but if you paid in future year, then it will be allowed in that year. Then we come to, these are some provisions relating to ICDS, and that ICDS related provision will be discussed in ICDS part, not here. Maintenance of books of accounts, specified profession, we check last 3 years turnover. If all 3 exceed 1,50,000, then compulsory books like journal, ledger, trial balance, cash book, and if any of them is less than or equal to 150, then any books of accounts that help AO to compute income. For other business and profession, we will check last 3 years turnover and profit. For turnover 25 lakh limit, for profit 2,50,000 limit. Any one also exceeds the limit, then compulsory books of accounts, anything that makes or helps AO to compute your income, and if all are less than the limit, then no need to maintain books of account. 44AB, tax audit. Audit by a chartered accountant has to be done. For professional, it is very easy if the receipts exceed 50 lakh. For professionals, if the receipts exceed 50 lakh. The rules for professional is very easy. If the turnover exceeds 50 lakh rupees, then it is going to be compulsory. For business, if the turnover exceeds 1 crore, then tax audit will be compulsory. 1 crore. Though you get presumptive taxation up to 2 crore, but only if you opt for it. So, more than 1 crore, if you opt for presumptive, then no tax audit. But if you don't opt for presumptive, then after 1 crore there will be tax audit, and obviously after 2 crore there will always be tax audit. But a latest amendment, and very big amendment, if your aggregate of the amount received, including amount received for turnover or gross receipts during the previous year, total receipts in cash does not exceed 5% of the total, and in your total payments in cash does not exceed 5%, then we are enhancing the tax audit limit from 1 crore, normally 1 crore, those who take presumptive, then after 2 crore, we are exceeding or enhancing that and making that limit 5 crore. That means we have to take total inflows. Listen, inflows can be for sales, receipt from debtors, it can be loans also. Total inflow, that cash should be maximum 5%, and plus cumulative total outflow, it can be expenses, it can be loan given, it can be any outflow of money, payment to creditor, total should be maximum 5% in cash. So do one thing, go to the cash book. Cash book debit side we have receipts, credit side we have payments. We have the cash column, we have the bank column, receipts and payments. Check the total. Here the cash column should be up to 5%. This is the payment side. Check the total of the receipt side, cash and bank total. In that, cash should be maximum 5%. Cash inflow and cash outflow both should be within 5% limit of the total inflow and outflow respectively. Then you have to get a tax audit done only after your turnover is exceeding 5 crore rupees. So those who don't deal in cash, this is really very, very good for such assessees. Okay. Very, very good for such assessees. And the second amendment that has taken place here in 44AB is that your tax audit has to be, and this is one amendment that all throughout our portion we have discussed, at least 1 month before the due date of return filing. Till last year it was on the due date of return filing, and both were September. But now due date of return filing we are making October. If we keep the same limit here, due date of return filing, so this will also become October. We want this to remain September. So what we did earlier, due date of return filing September, and tax audit due date was same as return filing. So automatically September. Now we increase that October, and this also refers to that. So this will also become October. No, this we will amend. We will say 1 month before due date of return filing. So return filing due date will become 31st October. This will remain 30th September. This is highest level of nonsense, because when we make our tax audit report, in our tax audit report we have to mention about 43B, about 48.2, about 48.3, we have to mention as auditors. And for some of them, we get time limit up to due date of return filing. Say for example, 43B, you get deduction if you pay up to due date of return filing. And if it is unpaid on the due date of return filing, then auditor has to report. My report I have to make on 30th September. And if the assessee is paying on 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th October, the assessee will be eligible. But what do I do in my report? My due date is 30th September. Highest level of nonsense. One day when I become the finance minister of the country, very soon it is a matter of time. Section 44 AD, presumptive taxation, turnover up to 2 crore, resident individual, resident HUF, resident partnership firm excluding LLP, and should be eligible business. What are the 3 businesses ineligible? Specified profession, transporter and commission or broker. If you fulfill these 3 conditions, then cash turnover 8%. Only if your turnover is realized in those 3 modes, account pay check, account pay draft, electronic mode, up to the due date of return filing. So any outstanding on due date of return filing also 8%. Cash 8%, outstanding on due date 8%, only realized up to due date of return filing 6%. Both will coexist. Just split your turnover into realized in allowed modes up to due date 6%, other, that will include cash and outstanding 8%, that will become not tax, PGBP. Add other heads of income, total income, tax will be at normal rates. You will not get any deduction from section 30 to section 43B, no allowance or disallowance, but brought forward loss will be adjusted. Not UAD, UAD is in 32. So not UAD, but brought forward loss will be adjusted. You have to compute WDV of all blocks, because for capital gain purposes. This is optional. If you opt for it, no need to maintain books of accounts. You can offer higher amount, but if you are offering lower amount, then you have to maintain books of accounts. Anybody opting for 44AD, then advance tax only last installment is going to be applicable. And once you take 44AD, then it should be taken for minimum 5 years. If you leave in between, then 44AD will not be available for 5 further years. 44ADA, resident, specified profession, turnover up to 50 lakh. 3 conditions. Resident, specified profession, turnover up to 50 lakh rupees, then turnover into 50%, not tax, PGBP. 50% of your turnover will become your profits and gains of business or profession. All other conditions are same. So optional. Only if you opt, then only you don't maintain books of accounts. Otherwise, you will have to maintain books of accounts. You can offer higher amount, but for lower, again, books of accounts will be required. No adjustment from section 30 to 43B. But you have to compute WDV of all blocks. Brought forward losses will be adjusted, but UAD will not be adjusted. Then only that one thing, 5 years compulsory lock-in is not going to be applicable. Otherwise, advance tax also same rule, that only the last installment will be applicable. Only change between 44AD and ADA is that 5 years compulsory rule is not going to be applicable here. And then we come to transporters. For light vehicles, 7,500 per month or part for every vehicle, and for heavy vehicles, tons into 1000. So 18 tons, then 18,000. Tons into 1000 is going to be the income per month or part per truck. So light vehicle 7,500 per month or part per truck, heavy vehicle 1000 per ton per month or part per truck. And throughout the year, you should be holding maximum 10 trucks. You should not be holding at any time more than 10 trucks. Then you will be eligible. This will become your PGBP. All other conditions again are same. But here again 5-year lock-in is not applicable. That's one difference. Second, they have to pay all advance tax installments. That only last installment, today's revision lecture also we did. Only last installment is applicable only for AD and ADA. And third, one important thing you should note here, that in 44AE, 40B is allowed. Supposingly this is a partnership firm. So you apply this and calculate the income, and then you subtract 40B, that will give you your PGBP. So in all other provisions, whatever you apply 8%, 6% or 50%, that's your PGBP. You don't get any deduction, but here you will get 40B deduction. 40B deduction is going to be allowed. 40B deduction is going to be allowed. And then last, we have presumptive taxation for non-resident shipping business 7.5%. That's this section. And aircraft business 5%. That's this section. So take your turnover. If it is non-resident shipping company, turnover into 7.5. Non-resident airlines, then turnover into 5%. That will become your PGBP. Then accordingly, you can, some of the MCQ questions have got tax calculation. And on that PGBP, you have to apply because it's a foreign company. 40%. Be careful about surcharge, HEC, everything, because you can go wrong at a lot of places. Turnover will include what? If the journey is starting from India, then where payment is received, irrelevant. If the journey starts from India, then it will be included in the turnover. And second, if the payment is received in India, then where the journey is from where to where, irrelevant. So if you go to Emirates office in Mumbai and book a ticket from Dubai to New York, if payment is in Mumbai, that will be included in turnover. Origin, destination, irrelevant. And supposingly you book a ticket from Mumbai to Dubai and payment was made in America office, irrelevant. If starting is in India, commencement of journey is in India, or payment is in India, destination is also irrelevant. Commencement or payment, any one thing has happened in India, then that amount will be included in turnover, and any incidental amounts like handling charges, demurrage charges, all that will also be included. That total turnover, shipping company 7.5, airline company 5% will be the PGBP. And for the other two sections, 44 BB and triple B, as far as BB and triple B are concerned, so if the non-resident is providing services relating to exploration and extraction of mineral oils or turnkey project in civil construction, then in both cases amount paid into 10% is going to be their taxable PGBP. Again, their PGBP. That's our chapter profits and gains of business or profession. To get good marks, the only focus should be correct, add less, no effect. Question will tell you the treatment in accounts. Check whether it is in accordance with tax. If it is in accordance with tax, then no effect. If it is not in accordance with tax, then there is something erroneous. Because of that, you will either add or you will less. And every correct add less no effect will bring you marks. Every adjustment will carry marks. Focus on the easy adjustment where you can score your marks. There are some predictable sections: 32 depreciation, 35 scientific research, 37 to be political party. In 40A, direct tax related and TDS related, both will always come together, amounting to about 3 marks. 40A3, cash payment. 43B, deduction on payment basis. These are certain fixed sections. If you perfect yourself with respect to at least these many provisions also, then also you are sure of easy to easy manner scoring 10 marks, and it is highly probable that you can get your 14 also. So if we go by minimum and maximum theory, in MCQ minimum 25 and PGBP minimum 10, 35 marks you will score in MCQ and PGBP together. And if we go by maximum, in MCQ you can score 30 and in PGBP you can score 14, and you can accordingly get your passing marks only with 2 things. And season 2, at least, now let's be clear, I made one request in episode 4 about what happened with my episode 3. You all know that by now. And then in episode 5, I saw quite a few students are watching it live when the lecture was going on, but the response is still not as I expected it to be. So I humbly request you to please support me with respect to this. Yesterday when I uploaded about that, that I am started working on that handwritten colored book, the original book. I was the first one who actually started this concept also. I never published it. I just used to provide PDF to students, never published it. I was very, very bad, and I am still very bad in marketing. Any kind of marketing I have never understood. So I never published it. Otherwise, that's the original handwritten book. I have started working. I announced that, and I got more than 2000 people who have already watched it. So what's wrong in watching the revision lecture then? So let's be clear, students, that if you are continuing to support me, then I will continue. As of now, I have prepared myself for MCQ season 2. But obviously, I am going to see again your response, because MCQ lectures, we will be solving sums. You need to revise the full subject, and that means you have to watch the revision lectures, full revision lectures. Then only you can sit with me for MCQ sums. Obviously, that goes without saying. So you have to show whether you have watched the revision lecture or no. If people have not watched the revision lecture only, then does not make sense to record or publish or make available the MCQ lecture. So watch the revision lecture so that I can start working on the MCQ lectures. And that MCQ and PGBP together will make your 44 marks maximum. Passing is over. You can focus on exemption and using DT for your other papers. Be positive, feel positive. Just don't test positive. Be positive, feel positive, and together we will make it a point that there is a rain of exemption, better results than anybody else. Okay, so you support me, I support you. It's always going to be mutual. For the time being, I will call this the end of episode number 6. Thank you very much for watching, and we have got still capital gain, clubbing, set of deductions, and 3 chapters of international tax left, and I believe that maybe that is going to be so. I think in episode number 7 we will be able to conclude our revision cum amendments lectures. So see you for the last episode, episode number 7. In the next episode, I call this the conclusion of episode 6. Thank you very much.